ecosystem is severely disrupted. Financial system is increasingly uncontrollable. The geopolitical structure has recently begun to appear as unstable as it has always been uneven. This triple crisis infuses doubt and inspires reflection about our basic assumptions, as much as inflaming cultural debates and provoking dogmatic entrenchments. History, it seems, is moving rapidly beyond its all too hastily proclaimed end. Since the turn of the millennium, moreover, the democratization of digital technologies, techniques, and tools has caused a shift from a postmodern media logic characterized by television screen and spectacle, cyberspace, and simulacrum toward a meta-modern media logic of creative amateurs, social networks, and located media, what the cultural theorist Casas Varnelis calls network culture. Meanwhile, architects and artists increasingly abandon the aesthetic precepts of deconstruction, parataxis, and pastiche in favor of aesthetic and ethical notions of reconstruction, myth, and metaxis, or metaxis. These artistic expressions move beyond the worn-out sensibilities and empty practices of the postmodernists, not by radically parting with their attitudes and techniques, but by incorporating and redirecting them. In politics, as in culture, as everywhere, a sensibility is emerging from and surpassing postmodernism as a non-dialectical alpha bomb that negates the postmodern while retaining some of its traits. What we are witnessing is the emergence of a new cultural dominant, metamodernism. We understand metamodernism first and foremost as a structure of feeling, which can be defined after Raymond Williams as a particular quality of social experience historically distinct from other particular qualities, which gives the sense of a generation or of a period. Metamodernism, therefore, is both a heuristic label to come to terms with recent changes in aesthetics and culture, and a notion to periodize these changes. So when we speak of metamodernism, we do not refer to a particular movement, a specific manifesto, or a set of theoretical or stylistic conventions. We do not attempt, in other words, as Charles Jenks would do, to group or categorize and pigeonhole the creative work or this or that architect or artist. We rather attempt to chart, after Jameson, the cultural dominant of a specific age in the development of modernity. Our methodological assumption is that the dominant cultural practices and the dominant aesthetic sensibilities of a certain period form, as it were, as a discourse that expresses cultural moods and common ways of doing, making, thinking. To speak of a cultural feeling, or a cultural dominant, therefore, has the advantage, as Jameson once explained, that one does not obliterate difference and project an idea of historical period as a massive homogeneity. It is a conception which allows for the presence and coexistence of a range of very different yet subordinate features. These different yet subordinate features can alternatively be described as residuals of days gone by, or as emergents that point to another day and age. Postmodernism might have passed. It might have given up the ghost, as Josh Tosh rightly argues, but to speak of its death is also to speak of its afterlife. The death of postmodernism, like all deaths, can also be viewed as a passing, or a giving over of a certain inheritance. That this death, like all deaths, is also a living on, a passing on. The specter of postmodernism, but also that of modernism, still haunt contemporary culture. Others have started to theorize emergent structures of feelings that might or might not become dominant in the not-so-near future. The most obvious examples of such an emergence are all those practices that have become associated with the commons. Several theorists have argued, for instance, these practices ultimately point towards an alter-modernity, a future beyond modernity as we currently know it. And whether or not we agree with these visions of the future is besides the point. What matters is that our contemporary culture that enables these visions, or rather, that opens up the discourse of having a vision at all. Metamodernism, as we see it, is neither the residual nor an emergent structure of feeling, but the dominant cultural logic of contemporary modernity. The metamodern structure of feeling can be grasped as a generational attempt to surpass postmodernism and a general response to our present crisis-ridden moment. Any one structure of feeling is expressed by a wide variety of cultural practices and a whole range of aesthetic sensibilities. These practices and sensibilities are shaped by and are shaping social circumstances, as much as they are formed in reaction to previous generations and in anticipation of possible futures. We contend the contemporary structure of feeling evokes a continuous oscillation between seemingly modern strategies and ostensibly postmodern tactics, as well as a series of practices and sensibilities ultimately beyond those two worn-out categories. The metamodern structure of feeling evokes an oscillation between a modern desire for sense and a postmodern doubt about the sense of it all, between modern sincerity and a postmodern irony, between hope and melancholy, and empathy and apathy, and unity and plurality, and purity and corruption, and naivete and knowingness, between control and commons, and craftsmanship and conceptualism, and pragmatism and utopianism. One should be careful not to think of this oscillation as it is the dynamic, this is very important, it is the dynamic by which it expresses itself. One should be careful not to think of oscillation as a balance of power. Rather, it is a pendulum, swinging between numerous, innumerable poles. Each time the metamodern enthusiasm swings towards fanaticism, gravity pulls it back towards irony. The moment its irony sways towards apathy, gravity pulls it back towards enthusiasm. The Metamodernist Manifesto. 1. We recognize oscillation to be the natural order of the world. 2. We must liberate ourselves from the inertia resulting from a century of modernist ideological naivety and the cynical insecurity of its autonomous bastard child. 3. Movement shall henceforth be enabled by way of oscillation between positions, with diametrically opposed ideas operating like the pulsating polarities of a colossal electric machine propelling the world into action. 4. We acknowledge the limitations inherent to all movement and experience, and the futility of any attempt to transcend the boundaries set forth therein. The essential incompleteness of a system should necessitate an adherence, not in order to achieve a given end or be slaves to its course, but rather perchance to glimpse by proxy some hidden exteriority. Existence is enriched if we set about our tasks as if those limits might be exceeded, for such action unfolds the world. 5. All things are caught within an irrevocable slide towards maximum entropic disassemblance. Artistic creation is contingent upon the origination or revelation of difference therein. Affect, at its zenith, the unmediated experience of difference in itself. It must be art's role to explore the promise of its own paradoxical ambition by coaxing excess towards presence. 6. The present is a symptom of the twin birth of immediacy and obsolescence. Today, we are nostalgists as much as we are futurists. The new technology enables the simultaneous experience and enactment of events from a multiplicity of positions. Far from signaling its demise, these emergent networks facilitate the democratization of history, illuminating the forking paths along which its grand narratives may navigate the here and now. 7. Just as science strives for poetic elegance, artists might assume a quest for truth. All information is grounds for knowledge, whether empirical or aphoristic. No matter its truth value, we should embrace the scientific poetic synthesis and informed naivety of a magical realism. Error breeds sense. 8. We propose a pragmatic romanticism unhindered by ideological anchorage. Thus, metamodernism shall be defined as the material condition between and beyond irony and sincerity, naivety and knowingness, realism and truth, optimism and doubt, in pursuit of a plurality of disparate and elusive horizons. We must go forth and oscillate. Thank you.